All right, everybody, welcome back. I have my guest today. Let's go to our interview scene here. Sam, good to see you, man. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes. Listen, it's been a while that we've talked about doing this. I'm happy that we finally took the step. So how have things been going with you? And, what was going on for you this week?
Well, not much. Actually, just working my butt off. We talked about, like my software engineering thing. Trying to study for like certifications, A+, all that kind of stuff, and trying to stream here and there. Work life, that balance. I don't know how you do it, man. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, it's tough. I think the
could have
trick
three.
is that I'm a bachelor. I think. Do you have a girlfriend? Is that part of
Yes,
the
I do.
problem? Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Ha! Nailed it. Yes, people are saying hello, hello. So this is Sam, and Sam is a fellow streamer, so you guys can see his link there. Obviously a streamer because you got the mic, and nobody just casually has a mic on a boom arm and the background. Very cool. I like the little kind of, what do you call this? The thing in your background.
Oh, this right here, the privacy screen?
Yeah, it gives it like almost like an oriental touch to it. Kind of cool.
Yeah, I just don't want to.
Like you're streaming from a bathhouse or something. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like having that there because my apartment is not messy. It's nice. It's just I wanted to have like a solid background. I might replace this with like a green screen or something later on down the line, but
Yes. Boo says hello as well, and Kevin. So, dude, last time we talked on DMs, you were telling me about you're on this software engineering path as well, right? So I think you were starting a degree on it. Was that right?
Yeah. It was an AA in software development followed by an emphasis for my bachelor's in cybersecurity. That's something that I added in afterwards after talking to a few advisors and after talking to you.
So how deep into it are you right now?
I have about a year and a half left. I've currently switched schools. I was going to a community college. I lived down here in South Florida. So I was going to a community college, switched schools in the process of getting my A+ certification to be able to continue in that school because they need that certification in order for you to start. Mm-hmm. So after that, it'll be probably about a year and a half, and I'll be done.
Wow,
God willing.
Yeah, that went by quickly because I looked at it, and I think that time you DM'd me about, how was it for you, right? You asked me a few questions about my own kind of journey in university with that. I think that was back in November last year. Mm-hmm. And time flies, man. But it's good to hear that it's kind of going well, and you're happy overall with what you're learning and what it's geared towards.
Oh, definitely, especially now for the most part, because before I DM'd you, there was a bit of a kind of like a disarray in the way that like they were presenting like classwork and coursework, that it wasn't setting me up to fail so much as it was kind of overloading certain courses. Like they were giving you programming languages that didn't complement other languages, so they would throw in Python but then also throw in Java and then throw in web development languages, but it was set up in a way where it was kind of like overloading. So that's why I made the switch to this new school, which has a much better structure in terms of it's a WGU, Western Governors University. So it's like specifically an IT school.
Yeah, very interesting. I always find it kind of fascinating to talk to people about how their software engineering degree is, because some are very narrow. So, you're maybe doing very specific languages, and others, like in my case, we did super broad. Like, we did like hardware architecture. So going to the level of like processor instructions. So we would be able, like, in an exam, we had to like do a trace of a real processor and the instructions for each, like in binary. It's so crazy. Like the kind of stuff that really you would never do. Very few people would go down that route. But I guess they want to give you a really broad, kind of exposure to all different topics.
I mean, in the school that I was in before, they were incredibly broad. With the one that I'm going to now, there is a bit of a more narrow structure to it,
Yeah.
especially when I get into like the realm of cybersecurity. But yeah, it's interesting how they throw certain aspects or certain classes where you think they might not have anything to do with software
Yeah.
development or cybersecurity, but I guess everything all plays, in together
100%.
somehow.
That's one thing that I kind of realized way after doing uni, is that a lot of stuff that I didn't actually use directly, I used some of the thinking mechanisms involved in other stuff. There's so much that's transferable. We talked about the problem solving mentality, right? It doesn't really matter if you're solving, like, again, something to do with how a processor runs versus, necessarily algebra or something like that. There's an element of, taking a problem and kind of thinking of it in abstract terms and looking for the right tools to solve the problem. And I think that if my degree was really just narrow focus on, let's say, a couple of languages, one, I would have developed like a comfort zone thing with those languages. But then two, I would also not have garnered this kind of rich space of ideas and, having to problem solve in very different areas.
Yeah, definitely. Diversification at the end of the day.
Exactly.
It's like,
yeah,
it's gonna get you far.
And it's really important for you to get used to picking up a new syntax, a new language, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one thing they didn't do well in my university is that there was a lot of memorization stuff that doesn't actually happen in real life. So it was really important for me to know the exact syntax for, the language we were using for different classes, right? And it was very important that you knew by heart all the syntax and all the stuff, whereas in reality, that stuff is not important to know by heart. What's important is that you know how to navigate your way around what you don't know, and you can also look up those details, right? Because that info is available. So if you know what you're looking for, you can just Google it, and that's solved. It's like, nowadays, taxi drivers don't need to know the exact layout of the streets. Yeah. Here in London, I don't know if you're familiar with the black cabs from London. They're sort of like worldwide famous for knowing all the streets in London, basically.
Like the lay of the land.
By heart. Yeah. The lay of the land by heart. And that's like their exam is actually based on that, like knowing by heart. And it's not needed. We got tools that make that redundant, right? You have real-time information via GPS that gives you better information because it takes into account stuff like traffic and all that. So you got to be able to adapt. And the memorization piece is something that's still very problematic in how education happens. A lot of exams revolve around memorizing, I think.
Yeah, and I think in terms, because I'm not as well versed as you in software engineering and all that stuff, but from what I've learned is that a lot of people don't take that into account, or they kind of look down upon it somehow, where it's like, oh, hey, look, I'm programming an app, or I'm developing code for an app that'll do this. Oh, I don't know how to do this certain thing. I'm gonna look it up. And they're like, you're looking it up? I thought you have a degree in this. It's like, sometimes people just go on Google and look things up. There's a reason why there's a website, I think it's called Full Stack or something like that.
Yeah.
And you look these things up and you ask some people who might be more well-versed than you, or might have this certain nugget of knowledge that you might not have. So there's nothing wrong with looking that stuff up. And,
Yeah, Troy says every education system values memorization and following orders more than critical thinking. Right.
Definitely.
So I think that's an evolution that the kind of education system needs to make. But really, a lot of it is start doing. So I think as soon as you get a real job, you'll understand that those. I don't mean to be a dick about like a real job. I didn't mean it like that. But
well, yeah, I mean, no, like you mean like once you start your career after school,
exactly,
that's
because
what they're going to value the most,
because I used to think that I needed the same level of like memorizing and being super sharp on a specific language for my real work. And what shocked me is that they don't ask that of you ever. In fact, they don't care about that. It's almost like a weird flex if you never ever have to look anything up because it's just not a quality that's required of you. So yeah. Anyways,
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, just to say that
you know that you learn by doing.
Yeah,
you learn by doing certain things. Yeah, sorry. You learn by doing certain things, not simply just by memorizing it. Once you actually apply what you've learned, if you at least memorize something, or if you learn something of that, and you can apply it somewhere, and then critically think, oh, hey, this works with this works with this, as opposed to just like saying, oh, I remember this all works this way. Yeah. Sometimes it might not happen that way. Sometimes code sucks. Like one small error will get you, a broken program or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's important to not memorize like the actual solution, but how to get to the solution, right? Think on your feet and all that, and be able to kind of rationalize why you decided to do something a certain way. This is the biggest thing in interviews, because I do interviews for my for my company, for new people. And the biggest thing we look at is that people can take us through their thought process, and that it's like, it makes sense. It's like a cohesive thought process of like, oh, why did you use this data structure? What were the others that you thought of, right? And when someone shows you that they considered the different things, and even if their answer was not the right one, you can see why they went that way. And you could say, well, the right answer was this other one, but they have like a valid train of thought, right? So that's really by far the biggest kind of thing we look for.
Yeah, you don't want to be too rigid in your way of thinking. You have to be fluid,
By the way, Sam is from America, which is why sometimes we have a bit of latency and we cut each other off. So that's what's going on there. Whereabouts in America are you based, without revealing private details?
Sure, I am in South Florida.
South Florida. And how are things there, without getting political or anything? But are things recovering?
For the most part, I would say things are kind of at it's touch and go, especially with like the whole Corona thing. Right. And I mean, and also it's just too damn hot down here. The humidity. I've been living here all my life. I'm 33. I've been living here all my life, and I'm still not used to this heat. So whenever we're still in the period right now where we'll get maybe 1 or 2 cold fronts here. So it's like, I'd rather be freezing cold than completely like humid and hot.
Yeah,
how it gets down here. But other than that, it's just it's Florida. I mean, if you we're not in that area. If you look up Florida Man, it's literally just news clippings of some of the dumbest things that people do, and it just starts with a Florida man. Or
it's
Florida
become
woman.
A meme at this point.
Yeah, there's one where it's like a Florida woman is stopped in traffic and pulls out a baby gator out of her pants, and it's like, okay, sure, that's more central in North Florida, but we get some of those here down all the time.
Yeah, that's funny. It's a good exercise in remembering that what you see in memes and on Twitter is not a representation of the real people in the place, right? Because it's funny. Sure, you see a lot of these examples, but that doesn't mean that everybody there is like that. And I don't like this kind of how do you call this? Like the piling phenomenon, the piling on. Like when little kids like pile on like the one kid.
Yeah.
You kind of get that sometimes with recently it's been the U.S. because there's a lot of visibility, and I just feel like we got to remember it's all just people, right? There's like some people that are dumb, some people doing stupid shit. And you can't
tend to focus on that.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't just extrapolate that to the whole population.
Oh, definitely. And in Florida, much like I would say like California and New York, at least in the US, it's a huge melting pot. Like there's a huge population here, at least in South Florida, of Cubans, Haitians, a lot of Latin American people. But you'll see people of all different cultures and countries and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think
there's that. But
exactly. I think that's kind of the beauty of it. What does attract me to sometime visit is that mishmash of cultures and stuff that you guys have there. It's like pretty interesting. You got the whole Latino stuff mixed with So is it like a bilingual Spanish over there?
I mean, oh wow, where I am, you probably can't walk about 5 or 10 feet without meeting someone that speaks Spanish.
So if you don't speak
Um,
Spanish, like that actually hinders you, right? Because
well, not necessarily. It helps you more than it hinders you. There are
okay.
still some places like where I work. I'm among two other people, so there's a total of 3 people who speak Spanish.
By the
Because
way, do you speak
I'm
Spanish?
yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, I also speak Spanish. Are you
Okay.
actually from? Because I was raised in Spain for many years. So what's your
Mhm.
background? How do you speak?
Oh, I was born down here. I've lived all my life, but my mother was Cuban, so
Okay.
Spanish was actually the first language that I learned, and then
Yes.
English came afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. So by the way, Yami, I see you in chat. Hello. Sorry we couldn't get to all the messages there, but I agree with what you guys are saying about the education system, and I think not only does the education system need to evolve, but people need to be smarter about choosing a field that gives them plenty of options. Because one thing
Yeah.
that I hear a lot, and it breaks my heart, is people saying I am stuck, right? I'm stuck in this
Yeah.
shit job that I hate, and there's no, you can't, we talk about this a lot, you can't just ditch it because you have rent, you
Mhm.
have real world shit. But
Mhm.
something like what we're doing, software engineering, there's so many possibilities, right? Even if it gets
Mhm.
to a point where you want like something different, you can say let's go in this different direction. And sure, you may have to start from the bottom if you're going into something totally different, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
transferable skills. You know, the degree itself will get you through the door in a lot of places. So, you know, we do truly have a lot of options, which I think now more than ever, people need to look into those fields that, you know, have some different like paths open to them.
Yeah. And like some of the commenters were mentioning is that sometimes that choice is given to you at a young age. You're really impressionable at a young age, and sometimes you might be steered in the wrong direction, not necessarily in a malicious way, but in a way where it's like maybe your parents want to steer you a certain way, or maybe the school
Yeah.
system is showing you this career option is better for you. Then, that can kind of lead you astray. But it definitely needs to change. I mean, I graduated high school in 2005. And only now, after a series of different events, have I been able to finally focus on school. Life just happens. But I remember back then it was more so, hey, I'm pretty sure it still is that way now, where it's like, hey, you need to pass, get a high grade, score high on your SATs, like a standardized test to get into college, and then get this career. And back then it was just like 3 huge careers. It was like nursing, IT, which was still very generalized, and I believe that's it, like medical field and technology.
Yeah.
But it was very generalized back then. Now it's a little bit more diversified in what you can do: software engineering, web
Mm.
development, a whole bunch of different things. But back then it was, yikes, it was bad.
Yeah. No, I agree with people in chat. It is difficult at that age to make a decision that big, but
Mhm.
I think from it's useful to start thinking early about it, and that comes to
Definitely, yeah.
education, right? So your teachers should be telling you about how, you know, a particular choice of field will give you more or less options, and that should be something that they kind of tell you about. You should start thinking about those things early on. But also,
Yeah.
Funny says, how many people in the US get the job they want from their degree? I think that's a big one, not just in the US, honestly, because you see a lot of people also in Spain, where I was raised, where I did my degree.
Mhm.
You see people with a degree in their bartending, right? Because they can't get a competitive salary for what they studied, for example. And I think that compounds with the issue in the US of student debt, which is,
Mhm.
it's bigger than in a lot of other countries because you guys, it's very expensive, right? For you to actually go to a reputable university. Whereas in
It is
countries like
insanely
Spain
expensive.
or UK, there's a lot of government subsidies. So you're either, paying like little to go, or
Yeah.
even in some cases you can get grants, right? Fairly easily if you're a good student. So how was it for you? Did you feel like pushed to do a degree?
No, not so much. It's a bit of a long story as to like what happened back then,
Okay.
which prevented me from going to school in the first place. Not so much pushed, so much as to what I was seeing other people were being pushed. It was like,
Yeah.
hey, do this degree, find this degree in nursing, do this, do that. Only now I actually look back on my old high school and they're a lot better now in terms of diversifying what they teach the students. They're more of a STEM school. Back then they were a school that was considered a magnet school where they were focusing more on the arts, which is a great thing. But they kind of set aside the STEM portion. They put it to the side, and that was sort of an afterthought. And now you'll see it. It's at the forefront of every school's like curriculum. It's like STEM, like technology, science,
Yeah.
mathematics, all that kind of stuff. Which in turn, it's great to support the arts, and I hope that they still do, because I know that there's a lot of schools down here that have severely cut down on like the arts portion of like education and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But STEM is obviously where it's at.
Yeah. I think for some specific stuff like engineering, medicine, it makes 100% sense to, you do a degree. That's how you get in, right? Because you need that. But for something like art, and I'm a musician, so I'm not shitting on artists, but I get the feeling that it's more about doing than learning before doing, right? It's almost like I think it would be more valuable for you to take the money. Let's say you want to become a good musician, to take the money that a university education would cost, which is a lot in the US, right? So speaking about the US example, you could go to private teachers and say each year you're going to study under one different teacher that you want to, let's say there's something about the style from them that you want to learn, right? And then do like an intensive year with them and then kind of move on and pick stuff from different places, because it just feels like that degree is kind of an empty paper. Because as a musician, you can show me your paper, but what can you do with your instrument?
Exactly.
Right? It's much more like if someone comes to me and they are fucking, Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi, by the way, great guitarist, and he gets overshadowed by, John Bon Jovi, which is kind of the big star, but he's amazing, right? And so if he comes and plays the guitar, I'll be like, amazing, right? I don't need to see his paper. I don't need to see his degree. I'm good. Whereas I feel like people feel the need to have a degree. A lot of times there's this kind of social stigma, like, hey, I have higher education, right?
Yeah, I think Choi mentioned it just now on the chat. It kind of disappeared for me, but degrees aren't so much the end all be all nowadays. Sometimes when you apply for a job, you'll see it there as a requirement, but I'd say maybe 70% of the time, if you go in there, they won't really be like ask you to hand over the degree.
Yes.
I guess the actual like critical thinking, like we mentioned earlier, and the actual aspects of the job that you can do will be put into the forefront of their minds before they even see a piece of paper. Like, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do okay, great. Do you happen to have your degree? Okay, perfect. Even better.
Yeah.
But it isn't the end all be all, which is great. But certain places obviously do require one no matter what. But
it's
not
funny
as
how
it once was.
Dude, it's funny because I mentioned I do interviews and we never even ask generally where the person studied. It's we have to for like HR purposes, but they take care of that stuff, right? They make sure they have a degree because it's a legal requirement. But for us doing the interview, that's like, we don't care if you studied in like a prodigious school or university. What matters is what you demonstrate in the interview, right? And so much of that is, again, just showing your internal thought process and how you take us through the path of finding a solution rather than the solution itself.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, cool. So I did want to touch a bit on that because I know some people are actually interested about the education thing, or even into like getting into software engineering. If you want, like if someone in chat is like, hey, I was kind of, trying to get into development, there are actually other paths to get into it that don't involve getting a degree. And it starts with learning stuff on the side, right? So spend some time doing some tutorials. Python is a great wedge language nowadays, whereas if you know Python, you can kind of, do small jobs as a freelancer sometimes. So that would be kind of my recommendation. I mean, there's always work for JavaScript, although I think, as you know, Sam, that's pretty painful. I don't know if I can, in good conscience, recommend JavaScript.
I mean, from what I've read and from what I've been told in school and all that stuff, it's one of the most highly sought ones. I'm not sure if that's still like that to this day, because that was months ago, probably about a year ago that I was told this. But it is pretty rough. You're gonna bang your head against the wall a few times, like I did.
Yeah, it's awful, and it shouldn't exist. I'm convinced that the only reason why it's so widely used is that it just came at the right time, right place kind of thing, and it got widely adopted, but it's actually bad. So anyways, that's my non-partial, very objective analysis. What about C#? Sorry, C++. So C++ was the main language that I learned in university, throughout university. It was like my best one. But it depends on the field, really, Choi. In a lot of fields, it's been overtaken by C# because it has a lot of service integration and a lot of different stuff that just is a lot easier, a lot more efficient to do. But C++ is still king for some stuff like algorithmic studies and stuff that needs to be super fast and very, very specific. There's a lot of that still uses. Yeah. Oh yeah, C#. Yeah, C#. Very, very, very good one to learn as well for game development. Yes, C# is very good option. All right. Well, let's move on from there. Anything else you wanted to mention about kind of your journey so far with learning all this stuff?
I'm doing a lot better than I was before in terms of taking everything in. But that's actually something that I wanted to ask you, since they mentioned C# in game development. Does your knowledge of programming and software engineering, does that give you a different view on game development as a whole, or do you still view it the same way that you did before? Or does that give you a different
no, because the thing is, the stuff that I do, programming,
probably completely different.
It's very, so we call it low level in the trade, which means that it's high like detail. So we're in the nitty gritty at the level that I work in. And when you're doing game development, you're using a lot of libraries, a lot of stuff. So people have figured out how to do all the physics stuff, all the, motion, all that stuff is figured out and done. So you piggyback off those things. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? So you're not necessarily programming at that level. You're reusing a lot of libraries. You're using a lot of existing stuff, tools, all that. So it's very different.
Very different. Okay.
It would be fairly easy to kind of jump into it. This is why I say the beauty of our field is you can really, diversify, get into different things within the field quite easily. But it doesn't necessarily give me any special insight into how any of that works.
Oh, okay. All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about games then. What have you been playing?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm one of I don't want to know if I want to sound like an asshole right now. I'm one of the few who has a PS5 right now. I got lucky enough to find one.
We don't shit on people who got their PS5s.
So I've actually just been playing that mostly. The computer that I use now is not the most high-end computer. It's a little laptop I bought like a year ago. It has a GTX 1050. So I can play some games on there, but mostly it's just been here on my PS5, which is right here next to me. Recently, Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, which is insane. I love this game. It is so good.
Yeah,
damn good.
Yeah, I have to play that. I have it on my coffee table, and I've had it since it came out. So it's now 2 years or so, or a year. I don't know.
The same thing happened to me. I bought the original Devil May Cry 5 on PS4. I played it for a couple hours. For some reason, it didn't click.
Right.
And for about 2 years or a year since it launched, I was like, okay, I never touched it again. And then the special edition came out. I was like, should I shell out another $40 for this? So I was like, all right, it has Virgil, the brother. Let me check it out. And then immediately hooked.
Yeah.
And I probably played it about 5 different times on 5 different difficulties. So
yeah, that game has some chops. Yeah. Also, the chick that gives you the upgrades, not bad.
Oh, Nico?
What was her name?
Nico's great.
Nico, dude.
Nico, yeah.
Great, awesome design. Yeah, very cool design. Yeah. Just to get to one last question from the conversation before Choi had a question. Yeah. Well, I guess more of a comment saying my biggest problem trying to get into programming is a huge educational blind spot with math. I had my whole life.
Oh my god!
So that's actually like a myth that you have to be good at math to do programming, because and that goes back to the point of the field being so broad. So sure, if you get into algorithmic, you're gonna need math. You're gonna need graph theory. To be clear, it's more of algebra and graph theory than like actual math. You know, like integrals and that kind of stuff. That would be for other calculation stuff. But there's so much that doesn't involve that. You can do so much. Everything nowadays runs on databases, right? And none of that shit uses math, really, right? So a lot of systems, just to give you like an example of like some of the systems we deal with in my work, is we take in financial data. So we have like a blob of financial data coming in, and we integrate that into a database. So just put it into a container, right? And then we make it visible in a nice way for clients. They have some kind of app they look at, and they can see that data neatly displayed, right? That could be a startup in and of itself. That could be your job, right? And that doesn't involve any math. So just to give one example, right? Sure, if you're doing game dev, once again, it depends, right? For what engine you're using. Some of it you can get away with just using lots of libraries. Most people, I would say, are just using libraries and not reinventing the wheel, not actually doing like complex mathematical calculations in their programming. So I wouldn't let that stop you. I just wanted to raise that.
Yeah, just go for it.
Go for it, and find a niche that kind of works, and try a lot of different things. But so sorry to go back to gaming. So you mentioned you got a PS5. How did you have intercourse with someone to obtain that, or what was the process like for you?
It was just a stroke of luck that I managed to get there in time. I was one of the lucky few non-bots to be able to secure one. It was an ordeal in and of itself before that, but the actual process of getting it that one time where I actually went through, put in all my information, and it shipped to me was surprisingly easy. So I don't know if the bots were asleep. I don't know if people were just not on this, but I managed to secure one. And at first I was like, okay, this might not be real. It might be real. I don't know. And I started wondering that because it took almost a month for it to get to me. When normally it would take like about 1 or 2 weeks, depending on the shipping. So I started to worry. And then sure enough, one day, as I'm just sitting here cleaning the house or whatever, I hear the knock on the door and I'm like, what is that? It's like, oh shit, it's here. So
amazing. Yes. Corrido and I, if you can use your luck to manifest 2 extra PS5s, that would be great. But
I'm sending off the good juju for everybody.
No, but I'm happy, man. Yeah, I'm always happy to hear about people who actually got one, because all you hear is it's only scalpers, but no, real people got them too, right? It's just that it's difficult and there's a lot of demand. But how has it been for you? And are you happy with the system? What do you think of the controller? How it feels to play and all that?
Oh, with the controller, it's probably the best controller I've used in a long time. It just feels really, really good in your hand. Got it right here.
Oh yeah, show it to us.
It's nice. It's really snug. obviously it has that little Easter egg where if you put a microscope to it, you'll see like the little PlayStation symbols all around.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it feels really great in your hand. Because I have also the DualShock 4, and
Right.
it's just night and day.
It
The
feels
change
like,
that's there.
well, I say it feels. I haven't tried it, but it looks a lot smaller. The PS4 one, the DualShock. Is it actually smaller?
It looks smaller, even though I would think that it's more or less the same.
It looks a bit girthier, not to use a suggestive term, but yeah, because I also have big hands, so I like big controllers. I use the Xbox One controller, which is
a great one. Yeah,
it's quite like it fits, as you say, snugly as well in the hand. It kind of looks like the new PS5 one goes in that direction, so I'm looking forward to trying it.
Yeah, super happy with that. And to anyone who might be like on the fence, or anyone who's just itching to get one, as someone who does have it, I can tell you right now that if you have we have no other choice right now because of these bots and the scarcity of the system, is if you can hold off on it for a moment. There obviously, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, as someone who does have it, is that there's a lack of exclusive games for it. So
Right.
the reason I got it is because I just managed to get it on that particular sale, and I secured it, and I have had no issues with it, thankfully, for now. But I can say without a shadow of a doubt, there's not that many new games on here, and if that's what you're after, you can wait. If you're after the fact that it can really upgrade certain PS4 games that use dynamic resolution or dynamic frame rate to then bump it up to the max frame rate and max resolution, then go for it. Because other than that, it's something that you can definitely wait for.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I did think about, holding off. Obviously, that's why I didn't pre-order it. I tend to think that it's unwise to pre-order a console. You always see launch issues and stuff that gets, fixed in the hardware. So that's why I waited. The reason I kind of want to jump in right now is to replay Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is for me like a really special game, and they're releasing some new content and stuff. And then that coupled with playing some other games that I missed in the PS4. So for example, Days Gone is a game I missed. It would be nice to play it in, an enhanced way. There's the hope that they kind of patch up Bloodborne and it runs really well. There's obviously Demon's Souls, which I love as well.
Yeah.
And I love the original. I would love to play the new one because it looks incredible.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Have you played it?
Yeah. I've played it. Yeah, it's more games need to be like this, where they give you options, so you can either play it in 1440p at 60, or you can play it at full 4K and 30. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful game. It kicks your ass. Obviously, get ready for that. Anyone who's never played a Souls game, but I'm itching for. You've seen me mention it before. I'm itching for them to release a PS5 port of Death Stranding, for the love of Jesus. Bloodborne, and that's pretty, and Hades. Hades can come whenever it needs to. It's probably under exclusivity with Nintendo anyway right now. But
Hades is not on PS5 or PS4?
No.
Oh,
no. It released on Nintendo Switch, which my guess is that they're probably under some exclusive deal for like a year, which will end September of this year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Demon's Souls. I just want Bloodborne to either just keep it the way it is, leave it at 1080p, and just give me 60 frames, so we don't have the frame pacing issue.
Exactly.
Or do a Blue Point and completely do like a Demon's Souls, like from the ground up remake, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, I think Bloodborne doesn't need a full-on revamp, because, it looked great. It's just it was unstable as hell.
Yeah.
Super Wheels, what's up? Hello. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. I don't love the look with the white and black. I would much rather either like full white or full black. But I know a lot of people don't care about the aesthetics of it, and it's more of a functional piece.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some issues with like patents and all that stuff with people making their custom plates.
Right.
There's one company that literally just dared Sony to sue them, and they're still selling plates and all that stuff. And they've made like a matte black kind of plate that you can switch out here, which is something to look forward to, I guess, if you want to change the aesthetic
Yeah,
of it. But yeah, I agree with you. The white look of it, I mean, I'm used to it now, but it was kind of weird
right.
looking back on it when they've all followed like a very jet black kind of like color or
Yeah,
style, you
definitely.
know.
What I did for the PS4 is I have like some decals from D brand.
Mhm.
So I think they have for PS5 as well. I'm sure either that
Yeah,
or other brands.
yeah, they have skins and they also have like the
Yeah.
actual plates that you can remove. Yeah, yeah.
Right, exact. So people can, can figure it out. There are solutions for that if you don't like the look. But yeah, so I didn't know you were also a Souls fan.
Oh, definitely. Oh geez, I put in like hundreds of hours into Bloodborne.
Nice.
Hundreds of hours.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
hundreds of
so
hours into
you're
Bloodborne.
because I feel like there are two kinds of Souls players: the players that are at home with Bloodborne, and the players who are at home with more like the Dark Souls flavor. So it sounds like you're more of the Bloodborne type.
I would say I'm a mixture of both. Bloodborne to me is my favorite one of all. It was just like that mixture of like the in your face action and you have to be more aggressive. But my first Souls game was Dark Souls, and I put in a ton of hours into that one on the Xbox 360 way back in the day. And I never actually played Dark Souls 2. My own uh my opinion was kind of like marred by everyone saying that it's the worst of all. And I never tried it, but I did recently purchase it, and I wanted to take a look at it here on my PlayStation. And I also played Dark Souls 3 and Demon Souls. I'm only a few hours in, but yeah, Souls all the way, man.
Yeah.
Bloodborne was my
Woo.
definite favorite, but the Souls genre for sure, man.
Yeah, Bloodborne has got the setting for sure. It's got the Eldritch
Yeah.
thing. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what's going on your channel? What are you doing at the moment?
Well, trying to find some time to stream on my Twitch channel, and hopefully in the near future trying to post some more content onto my YouTube, which was a thing that I used to do a long time ago, posting stupid comedy sketches and branching out and doing documentaries and stuff like that. So that's something I'm looking forward to do in the future. But in the immediate, it's mostly just trying to do some streaming and interact with everybody out there who wants to
So,
join in.
so how does it work for you? Do you have like a schedule, or is it more like on a when you can basis?
It's sort of like a when I can basis, but it's more lean towards anywhere between Thursday to Sunday. Usually I like to stream Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, depending on my work schedule, which is incredibly random the times that I work. But I tend to try that, you know.
Bruce says, I love them very much. Those YouTube videos are amazing. There you go. Look at that.
That's my nephew.
And
That's my
that's
nephew. That's why he's saying that.
no, I'm sure they, he also says it like he means it. But so people can check out your channel there. I have caught your streams a few times and I enjoyed them too. We do have a bit of a time zone difficulty aware.
Difference, yeah.
Because obviously it's at the end of your day and that for me is very late. But I do try to jump in. But I wanted to ask you, I like to ask this of all of my streamer friends. What madness caused you to get into streaming? And, and why? Why?
I can pinpoint a time when I was 6 or 7 years old where my brother-in-law was carrying one of those huge camcorders. And the first thing I did while he was recording me playing was like, hey, record the game. And from there it was always like it was that kind of itch where like even back in the day, I used to have two YouTube channels, one for comedic content and one for actual like let's plays. Like when let's plays were like starting to grow. So I would record my gameplay and then post it. I would spend hours editing and cutting out dead air, cutting out certain things in the video. And I literally started my streaming, like actually streaming, about a year ago. And it was because I finally saw that my equipment was up to snuff to even do it in the first place. So I was like, let me try this out. And I found that it was, it was really fun. It was doable. It wasn't as daunting as it seemed before. Because back then it seemed super daunting. Like, oh, you need incredibly fast internet and you need two PCs and you need this. I run off one PC and just an extra monitor because I
Right.
usually tend to stream from my console games. But it was just me one day saying, let me just try this. And I had most of the equipment. I just had to purchase this little bad boy.
Yeah.
And I had a capture card that I had from a while ago, and that's what I use
By the
today.
way, that's a great
So,
mic. That's an
thank
Audio
you.
Technica 2020, isn't it?
2035.
Okay, they've released a new model. Yeah, very good mic. Because I had it for a while as well, and
Yeah, I love this mic. Yeah.
yeah, very solid. Yeah, and
I see.
you're
Do you
you're
have the
doing it
Shure?
right. I have the Shure. Yeah, it's a bit of a flex, isn't it? 'Cause
Yes.
it's like people who have this. It's like, sure, it sounds great. Does it sound
Mhm.
this amount of dollars great? Maybe. I don't know. It is a bit of a flex, I have to say.
Double
But
flex.
double flex. But my excuse is that I also use it for music and stuff. So I guess that's my justification. But also, there's an element of like having fun with it, right? And if you,
Yeah.
if the gear you're using kind of like makes you feel cool about what you're doing, that's also plays a role. People, they crap on the stream deck because
Mhm.
technically you can do the same with way cheaper alternatives.
Mhm.
But the reality is it doesn't feel as cool. Okay, I can put anything on the LED buttons. It's a lot more easy to do like creative action groups where I press one button and it does like a complex transition for me and a few things. So
Yeah.
there's something to be said about like stuff that like helps your creativity thrive as well. So
Yeah. Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely.
But what is it for you, like streaming? How do you view it? Do you view it as like a potentially a side gig you want to grow, or more of just like a hobby thing?
Um, it is at the moment like a hobby thing. I'm off to school and back into school in a bit, and with work and all that stuff, it's a little harder to try to make it a side gig. I try to treat it as a hobby for now. And if it becomes that, then more power to
Yeah,
me or to anyone who turns into a side gig. It's incredibly, I don't want to say incredibly hard, but it can just be pretty daunting, especially with like the oversaturation of, everyone who jumps in immediately looking at this as like a side job or a side gig. But just have fun with it. To anyone, if anyone needs any advice, especially from someone who only has like 14 followers and streams to an audience that's very small, like just do it for fun. Don't worry about the numbers because that's going to drive you to just quit in about 6 months.
yeah. The
And
thing with
yeah,
worrying about number, well, you do have to like look at metrics, right? See, hey, are we
yeah, to a
growing,
certain
right?
degree.
Is it progressing in
Yeah.
some way? Of course. By the way, Tad
Mhm.
Harris, thanks for the follow. Or Taharis, Tadaris. Sorry, you'll have to teach me how to pronounce that. The eternal struggle of the streamer trying to pronounce names. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it is figuring out if you actually enjoy it, because
Yeah.
the numbers thing, you will never be happy, right? If you have 10 people, you want 15. If you have 15, you want 20. So it's always the same game of trying to grow,
Mhm.
but there has to be something about it that gives you more energy than it takes. Otherwise, it will
Mhm.
continually feel like a drag and a chore and something that's exhausting you. So look
Yeah,
for that. If you get that from it, keep at it. If you don't, maybe it's not for you.
definitely. Yeah.
Beautiful. But you had a few topics. So one interesting thing you brought up was kind of discuss your like top game of 2020 in a year that for a lot of people kind of, was kind of shit. For you, what was your top gaming experience of 2020?
That's the thing, is like 2020 was such a horrible year, politically wise,
Yes.
coronavirus, all that kind of stuff. But gaming just completely like destroyed everything in terms of like quality of games and all that shit. You know, it's like,
Yeah,
hey, there's just all this death and destruction, all that stuff, but gaming.
we
is
can
so
stay
good.
home and play games. It's fine.
Yeah. But good lord, man. Hades, Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes.
I was gonna say Death Stranding, but that was 2019.
Well, it came
But
out on
those
PC
two-
last year.
Then Death Stranding.
There you go.
I'm including that one in the two. But no, definitely the thing that stood out for me in 2020 was Hades. I know that this has been like discussed as like the game of the year for a lot of people, but it completely like blew me away. Like the procedural generation and like the smooth the
Yeah.
movement and the action and the story. Actually, the story actually was something that was pretty great. And the voice acting, I love the voice acting in that game. It's
Yeah, it's an excellent game. I think that for me, I kind of compare it to Dead Cells. I don't know if you've played that one.
Oh, Dead Cells was awesome too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put in a bit of time on that one.
Yeah, I love the gameplay in Dead Cells, and in some ways more because there were so many weapons, right? The thing with Hades for me that I didn't like as much was that you really only had like 5 weapons to go with. Sure, you know, there's a lot of different builds you could do with each, so there was still a lot there. But I think what's unique about Hades is how they weave in a very interesting story as well. With even if you don't like the story, the characters are engaging, right? There's something about talking with fucking Achilles, you know, and all these figures from Greek mythology that for a lot of us, Greek mythology is kind of the go-to, right? We all know from movies and stuff some of these like prototype of characters, so it's really, really interesting to see them interact, and you can kind of choose to gain favor. The whole idea of, you know, gaining favor of one god, and then there's banter between them, and, you know, maybe if you favor one god, the other one will be angry at you, right? So there's a lot of that.
And it's true to form in terms of like Greek mythology itself, where in certain movies or TV shows or any kind of other like medium, they're kind of romanticized as like these benevolent things. And when you look at the actual like Greek mythology, they were dicks.
Oh yeah,
some of them were assholes, and I like that this game kind of shows that too. It's like, oh, you chose this god, so I'm gonna try to kill you now. But even though you're my nephew, but it shows that aspect really well, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, Chrono used to eat his children. So Chrono, one of the big primordial gods in the mythology, actually ate his children.
And Zeus used to turn into eagles and bats and crows
and all kinds of animals,
and goats, and bang chicks. And
yeah,
you know, have
I never
children.
understood how the chicks got interested in the animal. Right? There's some, I guess there's some god magic happening there, where instead of seeing it as a normal chicken, they're like, "Yo, that's a power chicken right there. Come here."
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's one godly chicken.
That's one godly chicken. Amazing. Yeah. So Hades is a great pick, I think. For me, I would have to say Final Fantasy VII Remake, because it's not just the fact that I love the original and stuff, but I don't think I've ever been so positively surprised by a game release, because I was very carefully, you know, containing my hype and my expectations, because I knew it was probably not going to be amazing, or at least I thought, given that many remakes aren't. So I had very controlled expectations. Preserve the soundtrack in a key way.
Yes.
Preserve the story, so present it in a similar way, let's say. Preserve the characters, once again, represent the characters in a similar way. All else, it's fine. If the gameplay sucks, I'll live with it, right? If the graphics aren't incredible, I'll live with it. But instead, we actually got like a really solid game on its own merits. So people like Carrick, whom, you know, isn't impressed by a lot of games, right? So his response was like, not bad. That's like that's big praise, because he has no nostalgia for that game. So someone who goes into it and enjoys the game just for the game, that kind of goes to show that it's like a big success. And for me, not only that, but it's, for me, a better portrayal of the original material, original game, than the original game. Because let's be honest, it hasn't aged particularly well, the old game, the original game.
Yeah.
If you go back to it as a new player, it's rough, right? I mean, Tifa is like four blocks on the screen, and it's still like very charming blocks, but it is rough, right? It's rough to get into, and it's kind of a shame because a lot of people who didn't get that experience back in the day, they didn't get that cool story, that kind of like the music and all that sort of powerful stuff that many of us did get. And I think that now people can. A lot of people now can get it playing this game. So, as Corrido said, 7 out of 7 Corridos. That's our rating system. 7 out of 7. Very good. Excellent.
Yeah, that was in my top 5 too. Going back to what you said, like if you go back to the original, there are a few missteps that you don't notice until you go back. There was a lot of mistranslations that kind of hurt the story in a certain way. And obviously, the graphics and all that stuff, they made a huge leap, but I do like how the remake kind of turned the story on its head in a certain way, where it changes the dynamic of certain things, and without spoiling too much, certain characters might go through a different change or a different series of events. And there's actually a video on YouTube that's about 3 hours long, and this dude goes into massive detail as to the changes between the original and the remake, and how some of them, the changes in the remake are better than the original. Some of the things in the original are better than the remake. It's just 3 hours of just pure theorizing, but also critique. And I sat through the whole thing. And I agreed with the dude 100%, and he gives his theories on what could happen in the future at the end, and they make perfect sense. And I can't wait for the new games to come out.
Yeah, I think for me, it's less about, do you like this version more than the other? And it's more about how much they've expanded on the characters. Each character feels like they got their own substance. Whereas back in the day, Wedge, Biggs, some of these, if people know these names, they are like secondary characters. They really didn't have a lot of characteristics in the original that I remember. Maybe I'm missing them, right? But in this, it's like they're fleshed out, man. They got a lot of cool stuff. Even, for example, Jesse, it's a character that now is, it's quite loved. Maybe for the wrong reasons, one could argue, but...
But a walking thirst trap.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But characters like Aerith, for example, felt like this angelic person in the original game, like this perfect, incorruptible person. And she feels like more of a real person in this. Because she says bad words. She's the only person to say shit or fuck in the game. I don't remember which of the two. And it shocked me. Because out of all the characters, I wouldn't expect her to say it, but it gives her real humanity, right? She's still a girl in that environment, and she says bad words, and there's banter with Cloud. There's a bit of sexual intention there as well, which they introduce. I don't know. There's more nuance to the characters, I feel. So I'm very happy with it, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's that leap. It's that leap from the original where it was just all text based.
Yeah.
To a now a more, like you said, a more nuanced characterization. Have video and audio cues. Yeah. You can see their faces, like their reactions to certain things. Which obviously the game is as great as it is. Like graphically speaking, like the character models are great.
Yeah.
But you can now hone in not just on react to something audibly, like saying, "Oh my god," but you see it in their face, like the reactions. So that complements the original, but also improves upon it in that sense where we get a more kind of feel as to what they're feeling, the characters. So
yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And I guess like a nice segue will be to talk about this year's kind of highlight for you. Do you have a game so far that's been your like top?
I want to say, despite some quirky things, Hitman 3 so far.
Nice.
Has overtaken like any other game that I've played.
Have you played all the levels in that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I played pretty much every level. I think I've done mastery for all of the new ones
Whoa.
except for Dubai. But it's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane how awesome it is. You know, despite how kind of stiff Agent 47 is
Oh
with his
yeah, he's
movement,
so orthopedic and how he moves. It's great.
come on, man. Like give me a bit more fluid motion, man.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
go back into the drawing board and kind of like work on the motion capture because that was like a
It's so
it's like he's,
funny
like,
because they've
running,
never changed that in this trilogy. So
Nope.
they have the Hitman games with this format, and in all of them the movement is the same. And when
Yeah.
he like kneels down, it's absolutely robotic. And
Yeah.
but there's so much depth in those levels, man. You can play each of those levels like it's a different game. Like there's a level with like a murder mystery, and you can choose to not engage with it at all. You can do like a completely different thing, or you can get into it and you can be like, oh no, hold on a second, who did this, right? And then there's twists and stuff.
Yeah. It's maybe Infinite is going too far, but it has an incredible amount of replayability. Yeah, not just with like the game itself, but like with like the contracts and like the escalation missions and all that stuff that you can, create. Like with the contracts, at least you can create your own missions and stuff, and the escalations kind of add different elements to that. And now they're doing the elusive targets again.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do.
Yeah, that's a good choice, man. I think that for me, it's Neo 2. I don't know. Have you played any of the Neo games?
Oh yeah, definitely. I played it back then on when it was PS4, when it released like the
So
original.
you played
version.
Neo 2?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your weapon of choice?
I use the dual blades. The dual katanas.
Respectable. Yeah. Was that your only weapon, or were you kind of switching around?
I kind of switched around at first. I found that those were like my bread and butter.
Yeah.
But I got a little too rigid with that after I saw a few videos of like other weapons and like different combinations that you can do, or like different builds.
Yeah.
That kind of like put my builds to shame.
Ah.
But I played that from beginning to end a while back, and I liked it a lot. But there was something that I just didn't click with me at first. So I actually played the game, took a break, and then came back, and it kind of like synced in. And that's when I went and finished it.
Yeah, it's a hell of a game, man. It's it's so rich with all the game systems. It really adds a new layer to the Souls formula for me. It kind of meshes this, deep RPG and also grinding, let's be honest, but I don't know, it's so compelling. It almost feels like a merger of Monster Hunter World with Dark Souls.
Yeah.
To me, like
I would say that it's like a mixture of Dark Souls and Ninja Gaiden.
See, I haven't played Ninja Gaiden, so I can't speak to that, but I did hear that they inherit a lot from it.
Oh yeah, it's the same Team Ninja.
Yes, I know they're the same people. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I
So
think
would say
that
it's a mix of
game.
that,
Yeah, sorry, but I was just gonna say I think it's coming out on Switch, a remake or a remaster of the Ninja Gaiden game.
Oh yeah, it's coming out everywhere. Xbox One and PS4 also.
Okay. Yeah, I might check that out.
So that's Oh yeah, definitely should. It's those are great games. Those are what Dark Souls was before Dark Souls. Like that, those games were intensely difficult.
Yeah.
Ninja Gaiden Black had almost caused me to throw a controller or two against the wall back in the day. Back in the original Xbox days. That game was insane.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let me ask you this, because I think you're younger than I am, right? So you're probably in your early 20s. You don't have to reveal exactly your age.
Oh, me? Oh no, I'm 33.
Okay. So you're actually my age. Yeah. Okay. So we're like,
okay.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
I'm 32, but we're there. Yeah. Club. Good. Because I wanted to ask you about how it feels for you. From my standpoint, I have this weird thing where when I think back about like who I was, let's say even 5 years ago, it feels like a different person, man. A boomer fist. Yeah. Nice. But it feels like almost unrecognizable. So when you look back, do you feel that different, or is it kind of different?
Oh
for
yeah,
you?
definitely. Oh, definitely, 100%, 100%. Going back 5 years, or even going back 10 years, I would say that I
Right.
was incredibly impatient, and at times, you get your irrational moments and all that stuff. But as time goes by, different people that you meet, different jobs that you get, different experiences, I guess, kind of like shape more and more of who you become afterwards. And some people think that that ends when you turn 18, but that just keeps going along as time goes by. You can be
Right.
in your 40s and still develop into someone that's completely different than who you were when you were 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, like 5 years ago, I would say I was a
Yeah,
completely
because
different person.
sometimes I like to throw that around on people. Well, I guess turn that around. So in the same way
Mm.
that for us it feels like in 5 years we've shifted completely, like who we
Mhm.
are. For people now thinking 5 years ahead in the future, there's so much space of possibilities to what you can
Yeah.
change into or be, right? And a small change now means like a massive result, later down the line.
In
So
the future.
even
Yeah.
small things like, tweaking your diet to be a little bit better, or like tweaking something in your routine, can have a massive effect. And it's kind of crazy to look at from that perspective.
Oh,
I know
definitely.
that it all
One
sounds
small
like
change
boomer
now is,
talk,
yeah.
as Scylla says, but it's really powerful to think about that. Like, think about making those small changes now, and then kind of look back later on.
Yeah, plant the seeds, let it grow in
Right.
the future. Yeah.
So, do you do a last question? Do you
Mhm.
do any sort of like future proofing stuff? Are you like getting into investments or anything like that at the moment?
Um, I will admit that I kind of jumped into the crypto craze.
Oh,
Um, but not too much. Like, if there's one thing that anyone can learn just by reading stuff on the internet, is never invest, whether it's crypto, whether it's the stock market with this GameStop thing that's going on. Never invest more than what you're willing to lose. And looked at the crypto and I was like, I'm willing to lose 80, and I put 80
wait,
bucks
wait,
so
hold
far.
on. How much? Because you cut out exactly when you said the value.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put in 80. I was like, I'm willing to lose 80. So
80
I was like,
bucks?
so I put in
Dude,
80
I
bucks
swear
at first.
Discord cut you out 2 times when you said the number. That's incredible. So 80 bucks. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so I put in 80 bucks. Sorry, it might be because I use the NVIDIA RTX voice filter
Oh,
thing, so
don't worry about
sometimes
it.
it cuts off.
You're
Yeah,
fine.
sorry.
Yeah.
And so I put in 80 bucks. I had a return of 200. So, that's something that's like I'm trying to let it grow. It fluctuates and it goes up and down. And there's moments where you look at it and it's like, oh shit, let me just sell. Let me get rid of this. But never invest more than what you're willing to lose. But
Yeah.
that's small potatoes. But in terms of other things, just making plans for the future in terms of like
Yeah.
my education and making a career out of what becomes out of that education, like my, once I get the degree
Right.
or whatever, to move into something higher than where I am right now.
Yeah, that makes
And
a lot of sense.
yeah,
So, before I go to my last question, tell people what you're going to be doing, if you have any plans for your stream or anything you want to pimp out for this week that people can look forward to.
sure. Had it not been for the fact that my job called me in today, I would have probably streamed a little later today. But I will be doing that. I live in the Eastern time zone, so I'll be streaming tonight around, I'd say, 10 p.m. And tomorrow I will most likely be streaming yet again, this time at 9 p.m. That's twitch.tv/Arkimonde. And take a look at my YouTube channel,
But
youtube.com slash.
what game are you streaming, or what are you doing
Oh,
on
I
stream?
will be I will be finishing up Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition with
Nice.
Virgil. Yeah.
By the way, we did have a question from Corrido earlier that I missed. He asked if
Mhm.
you've played other Devil May Cry games, and if so, what did you think of Devil May Cry 2?
Oh, I've played it since the first one on PlayStation 2. I played one. I've played two, but we don't talk about that one. I've played. I've played. That was horrible. I played three. I've played four. I played pretty much all of them. And I
What
love them
about
all.
that other one? I think it was called just Devil May Cry.
DMC.
DMC, thank you.
I'm in the minority where I'm actually competent and it was good. Had it not been for the fact that they just called it DMC, maybe they could have called it something completely different, and it would have done a lot better. But they did not, like the developers of the game. If you look back on certain videos, like to an analysis critique, they weren't the greatest in treating the fans very well and kind of like making fun of them. So I can see why there was an enemy the game itself. But
So
I liked it. It had great combat, and some of the features that they have in that game, they've kind of ported it into Devil May Cry 5. Like
luckily,
one or two different things.
luckily, the moving the camera with the buttons was not one of those features, because I played that game for total 1 minute before I dropped it, because you had to move the camera with like R1 and L1, wasn't it? Something like that.
Was this the DMC, the one with the dude, the Dante with the short black hair?
I think so. Again, I played very little of it. Maybe it's a different game. There was one
No, I think,
Devil
yeah,
May
that-
Cry game in which you had to move the camera with your buttons with L1 and R1. Maybe I'm mixing it up with another Devil May Cry.
I think that may have been Devil May Cry 3, because I think 1, 2, 3, and I do not remember 4 as much. They had a fixed camera view, but I think you can switch the camera
Yeah.
view, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was not an old
But,
one, Scylla, because I actually tried it last year. So anyways, doesn't matter. I'll check which one it was, but that was a disaster decision. Disaster decision. So my last question for today, what are you looking forward the most this year?
For this year, trying to be more consistent in some creative output. The school, career path and all that stuff, they're on track to just go not smoothly, but they're on track to go where they need to go. I've been wanting to get back into filmmaking in some regard for the past 5 years. The last thing I did was that documentary I mentioned years ago, and that's something that sparked in me the love of making documentaries or making, creative filmmaking and all that kind of stuff. So in some regard, I want to kind of jump back into that. The only issue is obviously finding the time, but that's one of my main goals that I want to get back into.
Sounds awesome, man. Listen, thanks for taking the time today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks, Sam. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.